we've been talking about the immune system, and I'm sure we want to know, and a lot of people want to know, what's the deal with COVID and the immune system? Why is COVID-19 so bad? Why is it so hard on us? So we talked about natural immunity, which is species specific. Obviously, that's something you're born with. You know, you can't catch feline leukemia if you're a human being. And innate immunity, which is gene specific, related to your genetic components. So things that your ancestors were immune to, that you're immune to because of your genetic makeup. So obviously, COVID is not covered by that. COVID-19, so the coronavirus that we're talking about, when the news first started hitting, I was actually in Japan at the beginning of 2020, and they were talking about it. They were calling it at the time the novel coronavirus. Novel meaning it's new. It's something that we haven't encountered before. So when our immune system encounters a new antigen, our first exposure to the antigen, so this is a new virus that came about, however it came about. And a lot of times new viruses cross the species line from one species to another. And so now it's every human being's first exposure to the antigen. So we talked about a normal response where when you are first exposed to an antigen, like when you're a little kid and you run across a cold germ, which a lot of colds are coronaviruses as well. It's just a different kind of coronavirus. This one is SARS-MERS-CoV-2 is what its real name is. And COVID-19 is coronavirus disease 2019, basically. That's why they named it like that. So we all had a primary response, our first exposure to the antigen, and it's 1 to 2 weeks before our antibody titer would reach efficacy. With a normal pathogen, or with other ones that we've encountered before, you would get really sick, you would recover, you would develop memory B cells, and then your secondary response, you'd have a more rapid response and maybe not develop the illness. Here's the problem with COVID-19. You die on your first exposure to the antigen, so you never have a chance to develop immunity. Obviously, not everybody dies, but a huge number of people died in their first exposure to the antigen. So I hear a lot of things in the news and in public articles and social media and that sort of things where people say, oh, well, I just want my immune system to handle this naturally. Your immune system can't handle it naturally if you die in your first exposure, because you never get a chance to develop antibodies to the pathogen. So that is the reason that COVID is so bad. 2 reasons. Number 1, it's new and nobody had immunity to it. The second reason is that it's so pathogenic that a lot of people die on their primary response to the pathogen, to the antigen, so they don't develop antibodies, they don't develop immunity. So that, in combination with world travel and different ways of handling it in different countries, and the fact that it's so virulent that you can catch it just by breathing the same air as somebody else, that makes it extremely dangerous. So here's our thing again. We meet the antigen. Our primary response takes 1 to 2 weeks. The second time we meet it doesn't take as long. We have a bigger response. But if you die on the first response, you never get a chance to have that secondary immune response. So that's why COVID's so bad. We talked about the different kinds of immunity: active natural immunity, natural exposure to the antigen, and development of antibodies. Okay, we can't do that with COVID if it kills us on the first exposure. So we can't develop active natural immunity. Active artificial immunity, yes, now we have a vaccine. We can do that. We can develop active artificial immunity, and that is what is saving lives right now. we stimulate antibody production with that vaccine. And the really amazing thing about the new COVID vaccines, it is an entirely new type of vaccine. It used to be vaccines were either a disabled or killed virus that would still cause the immune response in your body. This is the first vaccine where they sequenced the DNA of the pathogen. They created an mRNA strand to mimic the spike protein in the protein coat of the virus, and they made that into the vaccine. That's amazing. That is a huge medical breakthrough, and that's going to make future vaccines more powerful, more specific, and give us the ability to have a better response to things like flu and other viruses. So it's a huge breakthrough in vaccine production. A lot of times in human development, breakthroughs are made under extreme stress. The breakthrough's made because you have to do it. People are dying in the hundreds of thousands, in the millions. And so something has to break through. And this was the breakthrough. The vaccine is the breakthrough. So it's amazing. And the thing is, though, is that breakthrough would not have been possible without 40 years of basic science in molecular genetics that led up to that. So this is the fruition, this is the medical treatment that molecular biology has been working towards for 40 years. So it's amazing. And I think that has all been missed with all the news and politics and social media and stress and horrible things that have happened to people because of COVID. But this is a major, major breakthrough in medicine. So let's appreciate that for a minute. So with passive natural immunity, I actually read a couple studies where mothers who caught COVID-19 while they were pregnant and didn't die from it, thank goodness, transferred the immunity to their children. So that's pretty exciting. So that passive natural immunity could happen if COVID doesn't kill you the first time. There's that. And then passive artificial immunity, injection of antibodies for short-term protection, that was never developed with COVID because a vaccine was developed so quickly. And the way the vaccine was developed so quickly is because they took out the red tape. A lot of times they're waiting for research studies to be approved. They're waiting for to go to the next step of approval. And that was all streamlined, and that's why the vaccine was developed so quickly. So it's not the development of vaccine that takes a long time. It's the administrative part of it that takes a long time. So natural active immunity isn't going to work for COVID. Artificial active immunity is the ticket. It's the vaccine. That's what we got to do. Natural passive, it's risky, but it can happen. And artificial passive isn't used. So just sort of equating what's happening now to what we're learning, it's important. This is really important stuff, and we're like on the edge of it. We're all getting to experience this. So it's this crazy time in the world, but it's a great time to learn things too.